Okay, this is chapter 37 test, and there's only 30 questions. The first 10 are just basic terms that you just need to identify the historical significance of. So just write a sentence or so defining the term. Betty Friedan, Joseph McCarthy, Ho Chi Minh, Ngo Dinh Diem, Nikita Khrushchev, McCarthyism, the feminine mystique, the checkers speech, Brown versus Board of Education, and the U2 incident. So the feminist leader, Betty Friedan, who came up with the book, The Feminist Mystique, The Feminine Mystique, you might want to look that person up in chapter 37. We just mentioned Joseph McCarthy and his huge initiative in the United States Senate with the House of Un-American Activities and his witch hunt towards communism. Ho Chi Minh was the North Vietnamese, or just the Vietnamese leader who eventually became the leader of North Vietnam and who successfully attacked the French at the Battle of Dien Bien Phu in 1954. Nikita Khrushchev is the leader of the Soviet Union. McCarthyism is this hysteria, this anti-communist hysteria led by Joseph McCarthy himself. The checkers speech, we mentioned that the other day. Checkers speech was the way in which Nixon addressed the United States public on TV when there were allegations that he had received gifts illegally. And he took to TV, took to television, and went directly to the people. It's called checkers because he used the example of the gift that his family received of a Cocker Spaniel, and that he kind of avoided the whole issue by appealing to Americans' emotional side. Brown versus Board of Education is the NAACP, National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, suing various school districts, not just Topeka, but several school districts, for the reversal of Plessy versus Ferguson. The leading lawyer at the time for Brown versus Board of Education for the NAACP, the leading lawyer was Thurgood Marshall. Thurgood Marshall eventually becomes the first African American to be appointed to the Supreme Court several years later. U2 incident was the way in which one of our spy planes was shot down as it was flying over Soviet Union. The pilot was Francis Powers. And we also have the term Sputnik. The Sputnik was the Soviet satellite that was put up into space, and it kind of put a huge fear in the hearts and minds of American citizens because it kind of appeared initially that maybe the Soviet Union was a little bit ahead of us when it came to science and technology and space exploration. Richard Nixon was selected as Dwight Eisenhower's vice presidential running mate because he was one of these hardline anti-communist individuals, and so Eisenhower wanted to select somebody like that to put on his ticket. During the 1952 presidential campaign, Republican candidate Dwight Eisenhower declared that he would actually go personally to Korea to help end the Korean War if necessary. So it meant a lot for a general, a World War II general of Eisenhower's prestige to actually advocate for the ending of a war. In terms of politics, television did threaten the traditional role of political parties. It allowed the candidates to appeal directly to the people and avoid some of the traditionally political powerful bosses of a party. Anti-communist Senator Joseph McCarthy was probably someone who damaged free speech more than anybody else during this time. People were scared to death to speak freely because of Senator Joseph McCarthy. Senator Joseph McCarthy rose to national prominence by charging that dozens of known communists were working within the United States State Department, claimed that there were a bunch of Soviet communist loyalists in the U.S. State Department, as well as Hollywood. As a result of this, the United States State Department lost a number of its most prominent Asian specialists who may have counseled a wiser course in eventually the United States' involvement in Vietnam. So serious ramifications in this kind of McCarthy witch hunt in the State Department. Senator McCarthy's anti-communist crusade ended when he alleged that there were communists in the United States Army. The new militancy and relentlessness among many members of the African American community after 1945 was especially generated by the gap between American ideals and racial practices revealed by World War II. So at the end of World War I, African Americans came home, and for 20 years they took a couple steps back to previous kind of social treatment. Came back from World War II and became a lot more militant in their fight for social justice. Brown versus Board of Education. The court declared the concept of separate but equal facilities was unconstitutional. So it reversed Plessy versus Ferguson. In 1954, the Supreme Court ruled that racially segregated school systems were inherently unequal. Brown versus Board of Education. Now, President Dwight Eisenhower's attitude towards racial justice can best be described as a little reluctant and not inclined towards promoting integration. He was a little bit slow and a little bit reluctant. But to his credit, by the end of his presidency, he did get involved in the Little Rock crisis. As the French fortress of Dien Bien Phu was about to fall to Ho Chi Minh's communist forces, Dwight Eisenhower refused to permit any American military involvement. So we did not actively get involved in Dien Bien Phu, but we got involved quite substantially thereafter. So the leader of this national movement in Vietnam was Ho Chi Minh. After that, the Geneva Conference called that you would have two Vietnams, a North and a South, and that they would hold national elections within 2 years. So they did hold national elections. It's just unfortunate for the United States that the wrong guy won, according to our preferences. In response to the launching of Sputnik by the Soviet Union in 1957, the federal government began spending millions of dollars to improve American science and language education, and millions of dollars on defense. So this Paris conference that was scheduled between Eisenhower and Khrushchev in 1960, it collapsed because of the U-2 incident. It did not occur because Powers got shot down just before it was scheduled to occur. The factor that may have tripled the electoral scales for Kennedy was his televised debate with Richard Nixon. So I mentioned Eisenhower was the first candidate for president to use commercials to campaign. 8 years later, when Nixon runs against Kennedy, it was the first presidential campaign in which the actual debate was live television. And many scholars credit Kennedy's performance with helping him win, because he just looked younger and more vibrant than Nixon. When Dwight Eisenhower left the office of the president in 1961, he remained a very popular figure in American history, in American society. So that's pretty much the test. Again, you have about 10 kind of fill in the blank, define the terms, and then about 20 multiple choice.